The air in the room felt thick with tension, but I couldn't help but smile. She didn't know. She didn't know that I knew. Isabella, my wife, the woman who had stood beside me in the glow of success, had no idea that I had uncovered her betrayal. And Raphael, the man who thought he could take what was mine, had no idea that he was walking straight into a carefully laid trap. Betrayal doesn't come with a loud bang. It creeps in, silent and insidious, until the foundation of trust crumbles beneath it. That's how I felt when I walked into that hotel suite. A feeling of cold clarity rather than the hot anger or heartbreak I had expected. There they were, Isabella and Raphael, laughing in each other's arms. I watched them, their joy ringing in my ears like the sharp sound of glass breaking. But I didn't feel rage. I felt calm. I was the one in control. They were playing a game, thinking they could deceive me forever. Little did they know, I had already seen through their charade. This was no longer about revenge. It was about making them realize the price of their lies, a price they would soon pay. Our lives had looked perfect from the outside, a glossy picture of success. Isabella, the rising star architect, her designs gracing the covers of magazines, celebrated at every gala, admired by everyone. And I, Gabriel Moretti, the top financial strategist in Madrid, whispered about in boardrooms, trusted with high-stakes deals. Together, we were a power couple, the epitome of ambition and success. But the cracks started to show, subtle at first, like tiny chips in a flawless surface. A missed dinner date here, a good-night kiss that never came there. She started coming home late, the faint scent of perfume on her clothes that wasn't mine. I tried to ignore it. I convinced myself that she was just busy. After all, success doesn't come without sacrifice. But the late nights grew longer, the weekends away more frequent. Slowly, she withdrew, her mind somewhere else, her gaze distant. The moment I truly began to doubt everything was at a charity auction, one of those events where people fawned over her, admiring her beauty and grace. She stood beside me, wearing a stunning emerald dress, dazzling in the spotlight. But when her phone buzzed on the table, her reaction was quick. A twitch in her hand, a flash of panic in her eyes as she glanced at the screen. I saw the name that flashed across it, Raphael. That was the moment I felt the ground shifting beneath my feet. Who was Raphael? A client? A colleague? Or something else entirely? The question gnawed at me as I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep. Her breathing was calm, as if she had nothing to worry about. But I couldn't stop thinking about Raphael. The next morning, I knew I had to find out more. When Isabella kissed me goodbye and left for work, I stayed behind, consumed by the need for answers. Her phone was easy to find, lying innocently on the counter. I picked it up, my hands trembling. The screen lit up in the dark, casting a cold light across the room. I knew her messages were password protected, but her emails were not. I opened the app and began sifting through them, feeling the weight of each second. And then I found it, an email from Raphael, marked confidential. My heart stopped as I read it. Unforgettable last night. I can still feel your warmth. Same time next week, anger surged through me, but it was mixed with disbelief. How long had this been going on? How many lies had she told me, standing in front of me, pretending everything was fine while betraying me behind my back? I didn't wake her up right then. No, I needed more evidence. I needed to be sure. That day, I buried myself in the details, piecing together every little clue. Credit card bills showed meals at fancy restaurants I had never heard of, receipts for gifts that weren't from me. The hotel in Valencia, twice in the past month, both times under her name, with Rafael Morales as a guest. The truth was there, hidden in plain sight, and I could see it all now. Our perfect life had been nothing but a fantasy. I followed her, watching from the shadows, as she met him outside the hotel, her smile radiant as she clung to him. The way they were together, it was all wrong. That look she gave him, her smile, it should have been mine. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was patient, calculating. I knew revenge would be more satisfying if I planned it carefully. A week later, I watched them disappear together in Valencia. That was the moment. I invited Isabella to dinner at our place, preparing her favorite dish. Paella with saffron and fresh seafood, paired with a bottle of aged Rioja. Of course, she was late. Her cheeks were flushed, her hair disheveled from a long day. I poured her a glass of wine, my tone flat. "We got the contract, you and me," I said. "Or did Raphael get something else tonight?" She froze, her smile faltering. Panic flashed across her face. "What are you talking about?" she asked, feigning confusion. I leaned back in my chair, took a slow sip of my wine, and let the silence hang in the air. "You're a good liar," I said, my voice cold. "But you're not as good as you think." Her face turned pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I slid a stack of documents across the table. Hotel reservations, emails, credit card bills. "Explain," I said quietly. She stared at the evidence, her hands trembling. "Gabriel, this is not." "Don't insult me by saying this isn't what it looks like," I interrupted her, my calm finally breaking. "It looks exactly like what it is. You've been sneaking around with Raphael, lying to my face, destroying everything we built." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I felt nothing. No pity, no sorrow, only a cold, satisfying sense of control. "Gabriel, I made a mistake," she whispered, but I cut her off. "This is not the time to apologize," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. "This is the time to accept the consequences." The next part of my plan was almost poetic. I booked the same suite in Valencia where they had met, the place that had been the backdrop of their betrayal. It was time for them to realize that the game was over. Instead of confronting Isabella, I called Raphael directly, using a disposable phone and a fake name. They wouldn't see it coming, and when the pieces of their deception finally collapsed around them, they would understand the price of betrayal. I had carefully crafted the perfect plan, a masterstroke of precision and timing. Disguised as a potential investor, I arranged to meet Raphael and Isabella in Valencia. Room 305, the very place where their betrayal had flourished, would be the stage for my reckoning. I arrived early, the weight of the evening pressing down on me. I wasn't just there for revenge. I was there to take back control, to remind them of the consequences of their actions. I had brought everything with me: photographs, emails, even a recording of Isabella's frantic sobs during our confrontation. Raphael, so sure of his victory, arrived first. His arrogance was palpable as he walked through the door, unaware of the trap closing in around him. I watched from the shadows, pouring myself a glass of wine as if it were his home, not mine. A few minutes later, Isabella arrived. The moment she saw me standing in the corner, her face drained of color. "Gabriel," she stammered, panic creeping into her voice. I motioned for her to sit, cutting off her attempt at protest. Raphael's eyes flickered from her to me, unease creeping in as he glanced between us. "What is this?" he demanded. I smiled coldly, pulling the stack of evidence from the coffee table. "This is the end of your little game and the beginning of mine." I let the words hang in the air, watching as his bravado faltered. Then I looked directly at Raphael, the gold ring on his finger gleaming in the dim light. "By the way, that ring is beautiful," I said, a slight nod in his direction. "You look as cunning as my wife." He clenched his jaw, his face hardening. "You don't scare me," he spat. "You should be afraid," I whispered in reply. The words hung in the room like an omen, because what's about to happen next will destroy you. I placed my final card on the table, a small USB stick. "This," I said, "contains everything. Emails, receipts, photos, enough to ruin you, Raphael, both professionally and personally." His face crumpled when I mentioned his wife, and I could see the cracks in his facade. "And you, Isabella," I continued, turning to her. When this becomes public, your career and reputation will be destroyed. You will become nothing more than a cautionary tale. The weight of my words settled over them, a suffocating silence following as they realized their secrets were no longer safe. But for me, it was only the beginning. Revenge, I had come to understand, was not about blind anger. It was about precision, making every move with cold calculation. Isabella and Raphael had underestimated me, thinking I was just a grieving husband, powerless and consumed by rage. But they were wrong. I had become something else, something far more dangerous. My first move was brilliant in its simplicity. I anonymously sent the USB stick to Sophia, Raphael's wife. I imagined her sitting in the sterile quiet of their home, opening the package and seeing the truth laid bare before her. Photos of Raphael and Isabella, emails detailing their affair, even the hotel invoices from their secret rendezvous. I relished the thought of her world crumbling, her perfect life disintegrating in front of her. But I wasn't done. Raphael's real estate empire, built on the illusion of integrity, was about to come crashing down. I leaked every incriminating document I had to his fiercest rival. Within days, news of backdoor deals, bribery, and tax evasion made the headlines. His business partners were forced to sever ties, and behind closed doors, they pressured him to resign. Isabella wasn't immune either. I carefully orchestrated the exposure of her lies by tipping off her biggest client, a multinational corporation that had been poised to commission her for a major project. The letter was subtle, asking, "Do you really want your brand associated with someone whose personal life is plastered across the tabloids?" Within hours, Isabella discovered it, though she didn't know it was me yet. Her phone call came one evening, her voice trembling with desperation. "Gabriel, it's all over. My project, my reputation. I don't know what to do." I could hear the fear in her voice, but it left me cold. "Actions have consequences, Isabella," I said, my tone dead. "And yours are catching up with you." A month later, I stood on the balcony of my penthouse, whiskey in hand, watching the lights of the city stretch out before me like 1,000 tiny promises. The chaos of betrayal was behind me, replaced by a new sense of control and purpose. Behind me, the living room was silent except for the faint hum of classical music. Isabella had gone, her belongings packed into boxes, her presence no longer part of my life. Raphael had vanished from the public eye, his career and marriage reduced to rubble. Sophia had filed for divorce, taken the children, and moved to Lisbon to start anew. But the true satisfaction didn't come from their downfall. It came from the fact that I had regained control of my own life. They had tried to strip me of my dignity, my trust, and my future, but I had taken all of that back, and so much more. I leaned against the railing, letting the cold wind sting my face. Betrayal, I thought, is a powerful teacher. It strips away illusions and reveals only the truth. The truth is that I am not the man they thought they could manipulate. I have been forged in the fire, and now I am indestructible. I took a final sip of whiskey, whispering to the night, "Sometimes the storm doesn't destroy you. It makes you stronger." Months passed, and life found its rhythm again. The chaos of betrayal had subsided, replaced by a calm confidence I hadn't felt in years. I had learned to trust again, not in others, but in myself. One afternoon, while browsing in a small gallery near the Prado Museum, I saw her. A woman stood before a painting, her presence quiet and graceful. She captivated me instantly. When she noticed me, she smiled, her eyes warm and kind. "I think walking into the painting would speak more eloquently than 1,000 words," I said. Her name was Elena, a photographer in Madrid for her own exhibition. We spent hours walking around the gallery, talking about art, life, and everything in between. She didn't ask about my past, and I didn't feel the need to tell her. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. The evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting the city in a golden glow, and I realized something profound. Betrayal is like a fire. It burns away the falseness in your life, and what remains is what you have built. And from the ashes, something new emerges. A few months later, life had reshaped itself. The past no longer held me captive. I had risen from the ashes, stronger and more whole than ever. And as I looked toward the future, I understood that betrayal would not define me. What would define me was how I rose from it. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you haven't subscribed yet, I encourage you to do so now. By subscribing, you not only stay connected to these deep, meaningful stories, but you also become part of a community that shares in the power of transformation. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss our next story. Let's continue exploring these heart-stirring journeys together.